I've been a therapist for over 10 years, and there's a pattern that I see more consistently than any other, and it causes so much pain, it causes so much dysfunction, and it literally affects every single area of your life. And one of the most frustrating things about this pattern is that a lot of the time it's encouraged. And it's encouraged by people that are supposed to love you, supposed to care about you, and ultimately it comes at the cost of you being happy, you meeting your own needs. And it's a terrible, terrible pattern, and a lot of people struggle with it. This is something I see the most consistently in therapy, whether it's for relationships or the person working on themselves. This is a pattern that shows up again and again and again. What this pattern is losing yourself and forgetting all about your needs and your interpersonal relationships and your dealings with others. You leave yourself behind. Another way of saying this is that you're caught completely in a self-abandoning, people-pleasing cycle. Now, this is a really difficult pattern to break for a number of reasons. You might know that you're a people-pleaser. You might know that you need to make certain changes, but from a nervous system level, this has been conditioned in from an early age. You may have grew up in a chaotic environment. It may not have been safe for you to move more into assertive ways of coping, to communicate, to be able to stand up for yourself. It just might not have been safe. That means that another form of coping has to emerge, and very often this is what's known as appeasement or the fawn response, right? Which basically is another way of saying placating, people pleasing, trying to de-escalate and diffuse the situation. Other times this can be modelled. You may have had a parent that had to do this to de-escalate things. You may have seen them like overextending, overgiving, self-sacrificing in many areas of their life, and that becomes a conditioned response, and it can be in your unconscious template as well. That being said, this strategy is also a very disempowering way that we try and get connection. In your family system, you may have been seen as the good one, the reliable one, the self-sacrificing one, the martyr. And that might have been like your sense of identity, the visibility that was there, the only way that you got that sense of approval or acceptance or connection. And the problem with this is this then follows you into other areas of life. It follows you into your career paths, your dealings with friendships, your relationships. And in a way, what ends up happening is you're teaching the other people in your life to expect from you that you will always put yourself last, that you will always be available, that you will always be accessible, that you will drop what you're doing to accommodate them because you've always done that. And that's what becomes what they call the norm of that dynamic. It's the unspoken expectation that this is what they can expect from you. And it comes at the cost of your happiness. It comes at the cost of you meeting your needs. And you may feel like a bad person, you may feel really guilty or selfish or whatever other language you want to use when you choose to think about yourself. When it comes to making a decision for yourself, you might be overwhelmed by anxiety, fear, guilt, self-judgment. And all this is rooted in earlier patterns. It's rooted in your conditioning, it's rooted in how you're coping, and it's also very much connected to your relationship with yourself, your self-esteem, how you value yourself. And a big part of this shows up in your communication. And the reality of this is, when we have a better relationship with ourselves, when we trust ourselves, when we feel safe in our body, we can express ourselves more openly. When you're caught in that self-abandoning, people-pleasing, leaving yourself behind cycle, what happens is you tend to mold yourself to the people and places that you're in. You don't say what you really think, you don't say how you really feel, you don't ask for what you want, you don't put yourself forward for things, you don't take risks, you wait for permission from other people, you probably get everybody else's input before you'll share your own. You won't rock the boat. And because that, the authentic self is never really seen. The you, the real true you is never really seen. And you lose sight of that, you're not connected to that. And that's probably the biggest thing that you actually lose. Because the real you's never really witnessed, it's never really accepted and validated. And you're constantly having to mask how you feel and mold yourself to the people around you. Now, if you're doing this in relationships, what ends up happening is you're going to carry a lot of guilt, self-judgment, anger, frustration, and most importantly, probably resentment and anxiety, because you're trapped in cycles that's very difficult to break, because you're getting your connection at the cost of the self, you're getting your connection through self-abandonment, you're molding yourself into these different versions of yourself to try and get by. But the problem is you're teaching these people what they expect from you at the cost of you meeting your own needs. So how do we end up breaking this cycle? A lot of us, we have to work on the fairness of expressing your thoughts, your feelings, asking for what you want, and getting comfortable with saying no. That's a huge thing in the beginning, is developing the tolerance within yourself to be able to say no to somebody else's request, to deal with the discomfort that comes with them not being happy with your decision, to be able to self-soothe and regulate the anxiety that you feel when you've had the audacity to say no. Do not feel like you need to manage their expectations, manage or regulate their emotional response to your no. Because one thing that I can tell you that's guaranteed, and I've seen this over and over and over again, personally, professionally, with hundreds of clients, when you begin to make a change in any kind of dynamic, whether it's in a relationship, a friendship, a family situation, there will be pushback. You have changed the norm in that dance, because now you're thinking about yourself. Now you're thinking about your needs. Before, the person that was caught in the self-abandoning, people-pleasing cycle, you were only thinking about the other person's needs, the context of what was going on, and you excluded how you felt. And now that you're coming back into wholeness and more integration, you're thinking about all these things, you're going to start to communicate and put yourself first. Not everybody's going to like that. People are going to push back because now they aren't able to meet their needs in the same way at your expense. That might, what's the word I'm looking for? Interrupt or inconvenience certain things in their life. They might make you feel bad about it. They might guilt trip you. They might get angry. They might shut down, shut you out. They might push you out of certain scenarios. And they might end the relationship altogether. They might humiliate, laugh, shame, embarrass you, whatever it is. But that is part of the evolution of this relationship going through a shift, because if the relationship's not safe enough to hold the whole of you, this authentic self that's coming forward, that's rooted in respect, rooted in trust and safety, then the relationship has to shift. And there's grief that comes with that. But you have to move through the eye of the storm with this change. You can't fall back after you've started to create these changes, because then they have no incentive to change. We want mutually respectful relationships. We want reciprocity in our relationships. That goes for friendships as well. You may have a pattern where you look at your friendships and be like, this only works because I give up everything that I need in order to maintain it. I'm always available. I always hold space for them. I'm there when they need me, but they don't show up for me in the same way. And then once you start working on yourself, you're in therapy, you're unpacking your conditioning, you're starting to work through the guilt, the shame, all the fucking old trauma, all the old conditioning. And now you're showing up as yourself and you're expressing yourself. Not everybody's going to like it, and it might shock and surprise you who pushes back. It might be your closest friends that let you go. It could be family members. It might even be your partner, because the foundation that was there, that was built on self-abandonment or people-pleasing, that erodes. And what's left then is the truth. Like, can this person really be there for you? Can they accept the whole you? Are they prepared to work with you? And if they're not, because it no longer suits them, not every loss is a loss, as hard as that is. You will still grieve it, but you will have transparency around how that person really thinks and feels about you. Same with the friendships. If the friendship can only function when you're self-abandoning and self-sacrificing and overextending just to make it work, it's not really a friendship that's rooted in mutual respect and reciprocity. And the same goes for relationships. And this is why it's so important to recognize the link between the people-pleasing coping style, rooted in conditioning, rooted in your belief systems, maybe your early childhood behavior that was modeled, the nervous system response, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, being able to understand how all this fits, working with your nervous system, working with your conditioning, working with your identity, coming back into wholeness, the fairness of expressing yourself, being able to regulate how you feel, being able to move through conflict and recognize, I don't need everybody to be comfortable with my opinion. I don't need everybody to be comfortable with my decisions. You need to be comfortable with that. You need to lead from that place first and foremost. And when you can get to that place, everything can begin to change. And what's underpinning this that I see so much working with clients is the relationship with the self. It's working through the old trauma, working through all the old events that created this coping in the first place. Because what helped us survive in childhood, maybe even through adolescence, may not be what's needed now in this season of your life. And once that's let go of, once that begins to change, you will have powerful, drastic shifts in your life. Your relationship to yourself will improve, and everything then from that will feel more authentic. The real you will be accepted, and that is what you're really striving towards going forward. And that's how we break this cycle.